Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. As with all the writings from these masters, from the Bible to the Bhagavad Gita to the Quran to the writings from the Master DK to the Master Moria or whatever, or even Benjamin Creme's master's articles and stuff, even though they were written years ago, doesn't mean they can't be translated to what's going on today. Now, I say all that to say is I wanted to read an article that was written about 30 years ago, and it's entitled, "His Name is Love." It is becoming more and more obvious that the changes taking place in the world, apparent to all, are connected and interrelated, leading to the correct assumption that they share one common cause. Every day brings news of some event, political or environmental, social or scientific, which underlies the transformation now occurring on a global scale. Never before in our history has change proceeded at such a hectic pace. Never until today has man begun to comprehend the implications and possibilities inherent in such global change. All proceeds to plan, and gradually men begin to understand that there is a plan that not takes place by chance, that the control and guidance and intention play their parts in the unfoldment of that plan. So great, so widespread, so sudden and unexpected are the changes underway that few today can doubt that some unseen hand initiates and guides the outer transformations. That such a hand is that of the Christ many find difficult to accept. This is but to be expected, conditioned as men are by the narrow viewpoint of traditional belief. Nevertheless, it is indeed the Christ himself who orchestrates these changes, appearing before men in one or another guise. Many today work under his inspiration and guidance, creating the new forms through which to manifest new life. Others unknowingly hear his call and respond, seeking but to serve their brothers. A vast army now exists to follow his lead. In every land they arise, calling for justice and freedom. A new climate of hope exists in the world, created by the energies of the Christ. Tirelessly, he works to produce this change and so foster new faith in the hearts of men. When men see the Christ in person, they will quickly assume a new attitude to life and its problems. They will understand that the problems are man-made, exist in man himself, and are not the fault of an uncaring God or the result of mindless chance. A new sense of responsibility will endow men with the impulse to act for the betterment of all. Cooperation, caring, and trust will soon replace the present self-concern and a new phase will open in the evolution of man. The new awareness grows apace. Already the signs are there for the discerning that humanity is growing up, taking stock of its situation and preparing to change. Naught can hold back this tide of change when, under the inspiration of Maitreya, men begin to see themselves as one. This sense of separation will gradually recede as men face together the tasks of reconstruction and succor which call out to be done. The day draws near when all shall see the Christ. By what name they know him matters not. His name as love is etched deeply in the hearts of all true men. It is interesting that this particular article was published in December of 1989, but it was more than likely written just a few days before all the transformations in Europe and the fall of the Berlin Wall in November, because he would usually write it about a month or so before it was published. So it was probably a couple, 3 weeks maybe before the Berlin Wall came down that he was talking about all the changes in the world and stuff like this. And how the other thing too is that most people are unaware that the Christ has been working with humanity from behind the scenes to help create these changes. And that was one that was predicted to take place years before it actually did. So it's not like Maitreya made claim to it after it happened. It was something that was predicted long time before it happened. And if you lived during the 80s or remember any time during the 80s, that the Cold War was never expected to end. And even though in reality anything with a beginning has an end, right? Most people thought it was going to go on for a long, 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 long time if it was ever going to end. And a lot of people thought that that was going to be the end of the world because of the tensions between the East and the West. And so it's interesting when you read this article, when he talks about that such a hand is that of the Christ, many find difficult to accept. Of course, when people have their particular brand of belief about the Christ or about Maitreya or whoever, it's very hard to see that the relationship between the Christ and humanity goes a lot deeper than what most religious folks think it to be. And it's sad because they, in a very mystical way, but in a inaccurate way, they think that because they view Jesus as the only true Son of God, that is the highest relationship they could have with him. But in reality, it's not. It's fictitious in a way that it was set up by man to create power for themselves, but it was an evil that was perpetrated on humanity by creating that falsehood. And I'm not denying the Christ. I'm actually trying to speak esoterically about the relationship between the Christ and humanity. But what it really is the Christ principle sits within the hearts of all humanity. Now, we manifest it on all different levels, just depends on who we are. So some of us manifest it more than others, of course. Other ones, it's very, it might be kind of dormant at this time, but it's still in the hearts of all of us. The Christ himself embodies that energy of love. So the relationship between the Christ and humanity is really from my perspective, it's the potential for humanity is really what it amounts to. And so therefore the real relationship between the Christ and humanity goes far greater and far deeper than what most fundamentalists, especially Christians, take it to be. Even though from their perspective, there couldn't be anything higher than being the only true Son of God. But it has to do with us as much as it has to do with the Christ himself. But the Christ came out of humanity. He was one of us. He was the first of this humanity to become a master. And so he chose to stay and serve humanity in a way that only the Christ can do. Now, in time, as we start to lose that sense of separation, we start to lose that sense of that dogma and those conditionings that have been kind of put on us for centuries, and we start to really see who the Christ is, it will ultimately, and this is kind of what this article was talking about, right? When it said that, where is it? When men see the Christ in person, they will quickly assume a new attitude to life and its problems. And so when people start to awaken to the fact that the Christ is here, talking to them on TV, they start to see him, out in public and so forth, and see a man who's uncorruptible, like all the masters. But we're talking about Maitreya in this regard. And only has the deep concern for humanity that the Christ can have, and the love of humanity on all sides that only the Christ can have. It will awaken that Christ principle within the hearts of all of us. And that is how the inspiration and the galvanization of humanity, are those even words, will take place. And it's not the reaction to the fact that people recognize him as Maitreya or the Christ that's important. That's why it said, it doesn't matter what name you call him, right? How did he put it? The day draws near when all shall see the Christ. By what name they know him matters not. And so it really does not matter what your beliefs are about the Christ. It really does not matter about even if you do believe in the Christ or not. What matters is the Christ principle that sits within the hearts of all of us will start to be awakened by the presence of this individual in our midst. And that will speed up the change, because we will start to see that we can't live the way that we've been living, right? For example, a very good example, right, too, right? We can't have the Christ principle opening up in our hearts and not want to do something about hunger in the world. You just can't live like that. It's the fact that we believe ourselves to be separate that allows that to happen. But the Christ principle is the unity and the oneness of all humanity is really what the Christ principle is. So this whole idea, or this whole belief in the Christ as a religious figure, in my mind, it pales in comparison to what the Christ really is. And so, anyway, I'm just talking a little bit more about this story, but at the same time, the other thing would be, we can't live in a world where we're destroying the environment if we're one. you know what I'm saying? So that's why when we see the Christ, it will start to awaken in our hearts that Christ principle. Now, Maitreya being on TV, not claiming to be Maitreya, it doesn't matter. Like it says, it doesn't matter by what name he's known by, right? He is starting to have that effect on people's hearts. He's starting to remind people that we are one. Now, it might be slower than people think should be happening, but he's having to deal with the whole world, right? And not just a small group of people. So, but it is having an effect, and it will continue to have more and more of an effect on people in a positive way. The hearts and minds of people will start to open up to the fact that we are one. And as always, take action. Help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Have a great day.